Welcome back to this video series working with scenario management in Visum and PTV Hub. My name is Anett Ehlert and I'll guide you through the various aspects of scenario management in our software. So in this session, we focus on features that assist you when working together on a scenario management project. In particular, if you have scenario management project with many scenarios and many modifications. So we will look at user-defined attributes and after that on partial projects. So we will start with user-defined attributes. User-defined attributes can help to better document the work in a scenario management project. You know them from Visum objects, and you can also define user-defined attributes for scenario management objects. So that means for scenarios, modifications, and parameter sets. It also helps you to group and sort measures, for example, represented in modifications under certain categories. So in our demonstration project, we will create user-defined attributes for modifications. So we start with a user-defined attribute called year, which is of type integer. And that will basically be the year of the implementation. We create another user-defined attribute for modifications that documents the status. This is of type text. We will have another user-defined attributes for modification that includes the location, so the district. And we will have another user-defined attributes for modifications that includes the mode. So here in our demonstration, we use only user-defined attributes for modifications. So now that we have defined the user-defined attributes, we can edit the values. So for example, our bridge will be implemented in 2025. The demand is for 2030, and the same applies to the improved bus supply. The status could be confirmed here. The demand is still under evaluation. We have tested different bus supply options. So that is still in testing, and we include here the location, which is Saale for the bridge. The demand has not a district, and the improved bus supply is in the Südstadt and Neustadt. And the mode here is mainly PRT. The demand also is for car for PRT. And the improved bus supply is for public transport. So now you can imagine you have many modifications, and now you have here the same option as in other lists. So you can, for example, use the column filter if you would like to only see modification for a certain year. You can sort according to the status, for example. And you can also, as I said, group the columns so you see which years, for which years you have modifications. So the user-defined attributes can not only be created in this tab for user-defined attributes, you can also create them in the corresponding tab. So for example, for scenarios, you can create user-defined attributes using the icon here, for modifications as well, and also for procedure parameters. So that is basically all for user-defined attributes. So next, we focus on partial projects. So as the name suggests, you can export parts of your project to have a scenario management project on its own. And this can be useful for two cases. So for example, you can create a successor scenario management project with an updated base version. And in this process, you can get rid of any modifications that you do not need anymore or that are outdated. So for example, let's assume in 5 years, we still continue our scenario management project, and then we could, for example, have the bridge included in the base version, and some of our testing options we do not need anymore. And the second case is that you can create a partial project and pass it to a colleague or a reviewer. So for example, if you pass it to a colleague, he can continue to work on the project. So that means he can create modifications, scenarios, procedure parameters, and so on. And once he has finished his work, we can integrate the partial project again into the main project to have the added scenarios and modifications included in the original scenario management project. So in this demonstration, we will focus on the second case. That means I will demonstrate the steps to export a partial project, and we assume that the partial project is then passed to a colleague, and this colleagues, that will be me, creates a modification and a scenario, and then we bring back the new objects into the main project. So we will start by exporting a partial project. So we create here a project name, the project ID. We also need a directory where this is located. And then we can also log the objects in the exported project. So that means you cannot edit any objects. So that means scenarios, modifications that you now export from the original project into the partial project. So this can be useful because you would like that anything that another person, for example, is doing in the main project still fits together, and therefore it is useful to not edit any existing objects. I will apply a password here for the partial project. I also export one of the scenarios. So here I will use the scenarios with a bridge, because based on that I would like to create further modifications. The bridge is automatically included then in the partial project, and I can select other modifications if I need them for any scenarios. I can include procedure parameter sets. Here I'm fine with the one selected, so that is already in the scenario I selected and therefore pre-selected here. We do not need any global layouts for my partial projects. And we can, in this step, specify if we would like to upgrade the base version by integrating a modification into the base version. So in our case, that is here the bridge, because that modification is included in all the scenarios that we export. So in this case, it's only one. So now we have another option to log objects. In this case, you log the objects in the main project, because also later on, when you integrate the changes, you do not want that any of the basis for your modifications has been changed. So I will apply another password for that case and finish the export of the partial project, which was now successfully. So now we can check here, or we have a look at the basic settings. So you can see that the base version cannot be edited because it's now locked. Of course, you have the option to unlock the project if that is needed. So I can, for example, use the password here, the second one that I defined, but in this case, I will only check. So you can see here that the objects have not been changed and the password was correct. So our objects are still locked. So you can see that, for example, here in the modifications, I cannot edit any of the modifications because they are locked in the main project. So with that, we can now change to the partial project. So I will close the main project and open the partial project. Again, also here we can see that the base version is locked, that I cannot edit any of the modifications, they are locked, but I still can create new modification. And you can also see that our base version, which is automatically loaded when we open the project, has the bridge included here, so that in the background here is our base version, and you can see the bridge. So now I would like to create a modification, and I would like also to create a scenario. We will start with the modification. So that will be a road upgrade. And in this modification, we change some control types of intersections, and we change some link attributes. And this is now based on the base version. Remember that this base version here includes the bridge. So and now I can, of course, start editing as I would do normally with the modification. But for convenience, I have now prepared a model transfer file that I apply here to speed things up. So I will read this road upgrade, the model transfer file. So this includes all my changes. We check here the conflict avoidance for new objects. However, I only change existing objects and can continue here. And I can finish my modification. We will have a look at the objects that have been changed later. So I now can add the values of my user-defined attributes. So the year here is 2030. The road upgrade is still under testing, and that is located in the Südstadt. And it's also a measure for PRT. So now I also create a scenario that will be a do something scenario PRT for 2030. And this will include the base, the bridge, the demand, and the road upgrade. So I use my procedure parameter set that I have in this partial project, And here now I select the modification. So I have set the demand and the road upgrade. And again, the bridge is part of the base version in this partial project. So with this, I have changed my partial project. Of course, I could do more modification and could add further scenarios, but for the demonstration purpose, I leave it to the one modification and one scenario. I will close the partial project now, and now I reopen my main project. So, and I now integrate the partial project back into the main project. So this can be done by pressing integrate partial project. I select the partial project, and now I'm again have a number of steps to go through. So here in the first, I have to specify the modification that we integrated in the base version in the partial project. So if you remember, that was a bridge that has been included in the partial project in the base version. And if we integrate the partial project back, we need to make sure that the new scenario fits to the main project where the bridge is still a modification. So we also integrate the new scenario that we have created. We integrate the modification that belongs to that scenario. The other two modifications are already part of the main project, so we do not need to reintegrate them. We also do not need to reintegrate the procedure parameter set. We have not used any comparison pattern, and with this we can finish the integration. So the partial project was integrated successfully, and we have a look now under modifications. We can see here our added modification, which now depends on the modification bridge here in that main project. It is allocated to the new scenario, and we have here the values of the user-defined attributes. And if we go here back to the tab scenarios, we can see our new scenario that has the three modifications. So the bridge, the demand, and the road upgrade. And we will now calculate the scenario. So the new scenario will now be calculated. And now we have also here the corresponding scenario indicators. So with that, we have integrated what we have added in the partial project. And now we can also unlock the main project by applying the corresponding password. So the protection was checked successfully. The project objects are unchanged, and we have now again unlocked any objects in the main project. And at the end of this part 6, I would like to summarize the learnings of this part. We have seen how to use user-defined attributes for modifications and scenarios. We have also seen how partial projects can be exported, that you can edit partial projects while it is locked, and the partial projects can be reintegrated into the main project. So basically adding any scenarios and modifications or other objects that have been added to the partial projects.